Hi, this is Brian Vallejo. We're here with Brian Marx from Titan Games and Hobbies. He just top 16'd a SCG Open in Philadelphia. He was playing Legacy. So we're here with his 4-color control deck, but he has the addition of Kess. So we wanted to break down the deck, and we brought him in for you. Okay, so why did you add the addition of Kess? Most lists, they play maybe a third Leovold or extra kill spells. You brought in 2 Kesses.
Yeah, so Kess was a card that I was super excited about when it came out in Commander. In fact, I didn't even play this deck at first. I had all the cards for it, but I was like, it's boring, Leovold's dumb. But Kess really piqued my interest. So I was trying to find the best shell to use that card in, and it just drew me here. The card is really powerful, really versatile. It's another...
it's like another Snapcaster every turn, basically.
Snapcaster's 5 and 6. I also compare it to Jace because it is a 4-drop.
Right.
It's something that can end the game when you need to get there, but it also helps you in games where you're behind.
So when you're comparing it to Jace, are you comparing it in the 4-drop slot, or are you comparing it to the card itself?
But both actually. So Kess, frequently the first turn you play it, you're going to flashback a cantrip of some sort, which is just like when you brainstorm with a Jace.
Right.
If you're behind on board, you're flashing back a removal, which is similar to like a Jace bounce or something like that. And when you need to close the game, there's obviously any number of card advantage spells that you can get back with it. Yep. So it's one of those things that hits the board, can help you whether you're ahead or behind, and it plays a very similar role.
Okay. So what did you find were your best matchups with the addition of Kess in mind? Obviously, 4-color control is a very popular archetype in Legacy, but were there situations where you brought in Kess, you had her on the board, and you're like, this is either really good or this is just really bad?
So the matchup where it is best is actually the mirror. Any sort of these blue mid-rangey decks, black-green X, Kess just dominates, because Snapcaster is your best card in the matchup, and this is Snapcaster repeated. If you're getting something back with Kolaghan's Command, the best thing you can get back in regular 4-color Snapcaster, I can get back Kess, which is just a ton of Snapcasters. It's large enough to survive Lightning Bolt. It's hard to Fatal Push it without Revolt. And it attacks and pressures Jaces, so it's just insane in that matchup. I also like it a lot against Delver, because it's the only threat that you can play that can block Delvers profitably and still just generate your card advantage.
She also has flying, fantastic.
Just 4 toughness and flying are just 2 keywords, two things that are awesome in Legacy.
Yeah.
The worst matchup for Kess, I would say, is any sort of combo deck. Your Jaces are already kind of terrible in that matchup. They cost 4 mana. Sometimes you can use Kess to flashback some discard spells or Surgicals post board, but frequently they're the first things I board out, and I just try to bring my curve down and make the deck more lean.
Alright, sounds good. So let's break down the deck for you. Alright, so here we got the deck laid out for you. Brian, do you want to walk us through it a little bit?
Alrighty, so the main core parts of any blue deck in Legacy, especially fair blue decks, you're going to start with 4 Ponders, 4 Brainstorms, and 4 Force of Wills. You absolutely need the 4 Force of Wills in this type of deck because your combo matchup is pretty bad. Some decks can get away with 3 and play 1 on the board, but this deck absolutely cannot. And the cantrips are absolutely essential because they're part of your mana base here. Since you're only playing 20 lands and you're trying to cast 4 drops, you really need the cantrips to hit your land drops. Jace the Mind Sculptor is the absolute best Planeswalker ever printed. It's one of the core cards to any blue control deck. In this deck, it's essentially really, really good because you have a plethora of removal spells that can keep the board clear for it, and when a Jace resolves, you've pretty much locked it up. One of the big differences I have compared to other 4-color control decks is that I'm playing 2 copies of Counterspell and 0 copies of any discard spells in the main deck. Discard spells push you towards a more mid-rangey game where you try to strip their hand and then land a threat that they can't deal with. I prefer to go for the absolute long game. Counterspell is just a much better when you're in a top deck war because you can stop something preemptively.
So you don't want you would rather have a Counterspell late game than a Hymn to Turok.
Exactly, yeah. Hymn is really good because it's compact card advantage. You get a 2-for-1 just every time you cast it.
Right.
But in the late game, it's just a dead draw. And I wanted to minimize the number of dead draws that I have in this deck at any stage in the game. The removal suite that I picked as far as spot removal is I have 3 copies of Fatal Push, and 0 copies of Lightning Bolt because Tarmogoyf was a big concern. The Bolt decks can't deal with Tarmogoyf nearly as well.
Were you concerned about Tarmogoyf for the event mostly, or just over the regular metagame?
In general, Fatal Push I just prefer because in this deck I'm not really sending Bolt to the face very often, so everything Bolt kills, push kills. The only exception is Mirran Crusader, but Death and Taxes I feel like I have kind of locked up anyway. There's many Kolaghan's Commands, and I have a Toxic Deluge for Mirran Crusader.
Right.
So push just seems like it's a much more clean answer to the things, and you also don't have to fetch red early. The deck is based blue-black, and then the red and green are mostly splashes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your land split, how you came up with the ratios. You got your little altered arts over here.
Yeah, so the deck is base blue-black, so you start with 3 Underground Seas, and then I have a single basic of each of my 2 primary colors. Mostly because, with the exception of Kolaghan's Command, a couple of these spot removal spells, and then these heavy hitter finishers, you can cast everything in your deck with only an island and a swamp, which I think is ideal. It lets you play around Wasteland and Blood Moon really, really well. And then you have Underground Sea, which is obviously your best dual land. For the splash colors, you want to have double blue early for counter spells. So that's why I have 2 tropical islands and 2 volcanics, and then the 1 Badlands and the Bayou round that out. They also let you play around Choke a little bit, which is a concern for the people trying to hate out blue decks.
All right. So you were talking about this is generally a pretty stock list, except for your lack of discard. You added these 2 Kesses, as we mentioned earlier. You said they were your heavy hitters or your finishers?
Yeah, pretty much. So cutting the discard freed up a lot of slots, so these 2 counter spells fill some of that, but it also lets me play the 4th copy of Baleful Strix and the 4th Snapcaster Mage.
Right.
Sometimes you'll see lists that are trimming down to 3 of each, but I just wanted as many clean 2-for-1s as possible. This is a control deck that wins always through card advantage.
Absolutely.
So Baleful Strix is just a 2-for-1 in and of itself, really good against Eldrazi, the Tarmogoyf decks like I mentioned, and then Snapcaster Mage is probably the best card in your deck. The spells you're flashing back
So what was, in regards to Kess, what was your best moment in the tournament?
So there were a lot of really, really good ones. The best ones are when you play it and somebody has to read it because they have no clue what the card does because they've never seen a commander set. But my actual best moment in the tournament was I'm in late in the game against Tesserator. It's our last round before day 2. And the guy plays Padim, Consul of Innovation, which is a 3 and a blue 1/4, and it gives
one from Kaladesh.
Yeah, it gives all of his artifacts hexproof, and he draws a card every turn if he has the artifact with the highest converted mana cost. So that card is just an absolute beating. I'm looking at multiple Kolaghan's commands that I can't cast because I can't blow up his artifacts.
Right.
And 3 of my 4 Snapcasters have already been killed. So my only out is to draw Kess, play Kess, and flashback my Singleton Terminate, which is the only thing that can kill the Padim. I have Fatal Push in the yard, but he has a Chalice on 1. So this Terminate, flashback off Kess, kills the Padim. Then over the course of the next 3 turns, I get to Kolaghan's Command, Kess Kolaghan's Command, Abrupt Decay, Kess Abrupt Decay, and just cast all my best spells twice, take his board from near unbeatable to absolute nothing, and then just win in the air with Kess and Baleful Strix.
So top decking Kess was the thing that won you the game.
Frequently with this deck, Kess is the best top deck you can possibly dream of because your graveyard is stacked. You've been spending your interactive spells early.
You're talking about late game.
Yeah, it just comes down, and then you're like, okay, I'll have my
pick
pick
of play everything.
Yeah,
All right, great. Well, let's go to the sideboard then. All right, so here we got the sideboard. You can already see a couple interesting things. So why don't you tell us a little about your plans?
All right, so the main thing is the discard that I cut from the main deck. There is a cost. It's not just all upside.
Yeah.
Cutting the discard means that your matchup against combo gets a lot worse. So I needed to really skew my board to make combo a better matchup. So the missing discard is here: 2 copies of Thoughtseize and 1 copy of Hymn to Turok. Thoughtseize is better against combo. Him is better against fair decks, but split the difference. Yeah.
So instead of taking out the discard completely, you just kind of moved it to the sideboard.
Yeah, and it's less than most decks will have, but I think 3 is still sufficient.
Yeah.
And then I have the 3 copies of Surgical Extraction because the combo deck I was most afraid of going into this tournament was Black Red Reanimator. That's a really powerful deck. They can kill you as early as turn 1, and Surgical is your best interaction against them. I have a single copy of Diabolic Edict that's really good against True Name Nemesis, Eldrazi decks, and it can be good against those big creature combo decks, either Show and Tell or Reanimator. And then 3 copies of Red Elemental Blast. This was a last-minute change before the tournament. I had 2, and then I realized that just having the 3rd made your matchups against Jace decks a lot better.
What'd you have in the 3rd slot?
I think it was a 2nd Sylvan Library. No, it was a Golgari Charm. So I moved that, and I never looked back. This third Red Blast has been awesome. The 2 copies of Flusterstorm and the 1 copy of Invasive Surgery. These are also more interaction against combo decks.
Yep.
Invasive Surgery is both a 1-mana hard counter to things like Infernal Tutor, Show and Tell, Terminus, Natural Order. I actually got to get the Delirium ability and remove all of an Elves player's Natural Orders. That was awesome. And then my two supplemental like big cards.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that Chandra.
This Chandra has been amazing since I started playing the deck. I had 2 at first, and then I trimmed it to 1, and I kind of want to fit the second one back in. The main thought process behind this is that the power level of the card is almost as good as Jace the Mind Sculptor. It's just really freaking good. It's versatile in every situation, but the fact that it's red and not blue means it's immune to Pyroblast. So Pyroblast is going to be your biggest fear in any of the post-board matchups against other blue decks. They counter your Jaces, they kill your Kesses, they counter your Leovolds. I wanted some things that I could board in, the Chandra and the Sylvan, that were immune to those blasts and also immune to creature.
So which modes are you most interested in on that card?
So when you're behind on board, the Flame Slash can kill pretty much everything short of a Grimag Angler. But when you're head on board, you can either plus to flip the top card, which is either card advantage, or you're pressuring them with the burn.
Right.
And that actually works really, really well, because a card like Jace, while you tick it up, you're not putting any pressure on them outside of that loyalty. And then if the Jace gets blown up, you're just back to square one. With Chandra, she can get killed 5 turns down the line, but she did 10 damage to them in that process.
Do you usually keep in Jace and or Kess when you have Chandra? Yeah. You're putting in more 4-drops.
For the matchups where it is getting slower, I will keep all of them in. You just have to have an eye towards that and maybe fetch some basics when you otherwise wouldn't. Yeah. Because you want to really survive.
You can also... like you said, you combine it with Jace, Brainstorm, and then set up the top Chandra.
I've done that many times, and sometimes I've played Chandra, plussed it, and flipped a Jace, and then cast that immediately. That feels great. The mana ability is also not to be underestimated. Like you said, with multiple 4-drops, sometimes you can get them stuck in your hand. Right. Chandra really lets you just empty your hand very quickly, and then you just get way ahead of them in terms of tempo.
And then Sylvan Library is a pretty standard card draw in Legacy.
Yeah, Sylvan is another excellent one because, again, it dodges Blast, it dodges all the creature removal, and it just sits there, and over the course of a game, the advantage that gives you is insurmountable. Right. This deck often in other control matchups, you have a lot of life to give. You're not really spending life for most of your effects, and especially because I'm not playing Thoughtseizes in the main, I have a lot more leeway with that. I have no Phyrexian mana, so Sylvan could draw you 4 or 5 extra cards over the course of the game.
So you made a change after this event. You said you were playing another Kolaghan's Command?
Yeah, so I tried out last night at our weekly Legacy, I tried out a 3rd Kolaghan's Command because in Europe, we've been seeing a lot more of that Steel Stompy deck. It's essentially like a legacy version of Ravager Shops, and also Death and Taxes. So the 3rd Kolaghan's Command was pretty helpful. If I were to expect a field of a bunch of like blue mirrors, like Shardless Bug, this type of deck, even Miracles, I would want the 2nd Kess. If I expect more small creature decks, I'd want the 2nd K Command, or the 3rd K Command.
Great. Yeah, sounds good. So you're going to run the same team in Baltimore, right?
Yep. We ran. It's Cincinnati is the next team event we're running, and we ran Grixis in all formats. So I played this, which is Grixis with a small splash.
Yeah, Brian played with his brother and Steven Krisiak. His brother is Kyle Marx.
Yep. So my brother played Grixis Control in Standard, which was pretty great. It's a lot of the same cards, actually. Chandra, just red Jace. And then Steven played Grixis Control in Modern, which has gotten a huge boost now that Jace is banned in that format. So, we get to... In all formats, we're either playing Jace or red Jace, so that's good.
Jace is pretty much just present in every format of Magic.
Yep, and before the event that we had in Philadelphia, I had top-aided a Quest for Power with this event, or with this same list. I didn't change a single card compared to the one that I took to Philly, and I've been really, really impressed with it. The combo matchups feel a little bit rough in game 1, but the stuff you bring in post-board can kind of bring them to close to even, and then all the fair matchups just feel you're very, very favored. You've built your deck to be this high curve, card advantage based machine, and it's really, really hard to lose to a deck like Delver or the 4-color Mirror.
Makes sense. All right. Well, thanks for sitting down with us, man. And best of luck with your next tournaments.
Thank you.